accident. But this is not something you need to understand. There is a certain feeling that brings people to this moment. A quiet pull, a soft tension in the chest, the sense that something in the heart has been moving, slowly, without words. Love does not always arrive loudly. Most of the time, it settles in silence. You may have noticed it in small ways. Thinking of someone without meaning to. Remembering a voice, a look, a moment that should have passed, but didn't. This is not about prediction, and it is not about certainty. It is about the emotional climate you are standing in right now. Across every zodiac sign, love is shifting. Not dramatically, not urgently, but gently, persistently. And as you listen, you may find that different parts of this story feel closer to you than others. That is natural, because love does not move through signs the way calendars do. It moves through people, through memories, through unfinished emotions. So there is nothing you need to focus on, nothing you need to identify. Just allow the words to pass through you. Some will stay, some will leave, and somewhere in this flow, something may feel familiar. There is a kind of love that does not wait. It rises suddenly, fully formed, without permission. If this energy feels close to you, you may recognize the intensity of it. The way feelings arrive before logic has time to speak. You feel first, you act first, and only later do you ask what it all means. Right now, there is a quiet frustration here, not anger, not regret, but the sense that something started quickly and then slowed down too much. You may be wondering why the fire you felt so clearly has not moved forward in the way you expected, why the momentum paused, why the response you were ready for never arrived. This is not rejection, and it is not failure. It is the space between impulse and understanding. Love under this energy is learning restraint, not to weaken desire, but to deepen it. There is someone or something you still feel strongly about, and even if you tell yourself you have moved on, the body remembers differently. What matters now is not pushing forward. It is noticing what remains when you stop chasing. Because the truth here is quiet. What is meant to meet you will not require force. There is a different kind of love that moves more slowly. It does not rush in. It settles. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize the need for stability beneath it. The quiet desire to know where you stand, to feel something solid under your feet. Love here is not dramatic. It is consistent. It is patient. And yet, right now, there is a subtle tension. You may be holding on to something, not because it is still growing, but because releasing it feels like losing safety. There is comfort in what is known, even when it no longer nourishes you. A routine of emotion, a familiar presence, a connection that once felt grounding. Letting go does not feel peaceful here. It feels risky. So instead, You wait. You stay. You tell yourself that time will smooth things out. But beneath that calm surface, something is shifting. Love under this energy is learning that security does not come from holding tighter. It comes from trusting what remains when you loosen your grip. You may notice moments when your body relaxes at the thought of release and tightens again immediately after. That is not confusion. It is the process. Nothing is being taken from you. You are simply being asked to notice whether what you are protecting is still alive. Because real love does not need to be preserved. It continues on its own. There is a kind of love that lives in the mind more than the heart. It moves through thoughts, through sentences that begin and never finish. If this energy feels close to you, you may recognize the constant inner dialogue, the conversations that replay quietly, the things you almost said, and the things you decided not to. Love here is not absent. It is active, but it remains unspoken. You may find yourself wondering how much would change if just one honest sentence were allowed to exist. There is curiosity in this space, questions without answers, messages drafted and erased. You may tell yourself that silence is easier, that clarity might complicate things, and so the mind stays busy, filling the gaps. But beneath the movement of thought, there is a softer truth. Unspoken feelings do not disappear. They settle. They show up in small moments. A sudden memory. A reaction you did not expect. A pause where there should have been nothing at all. Love under this energy is learning that understanding does not always come from thinking more. Sometimes it comes from allowing one honest moment to exist. You may not need to explain everything. You may not need to resolve every question. But there is something your mind has been holding on to, waiting for permission to be released. And whether or not it is ever spoken aloud, its presence has already shaped the connection. There is a kind of love that never really leaves. It does not fade. It does not end. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize the quiet weight of memory. Not painful, just present. Love here is deeply emotional, but rarely loud. It settles into the heart and stays there long after the moment has passed. You may still feel connected to someone, even when there is no contact, even when time has moved on. This is not weakness. It is depth. The heart remembers what the mind tries to organize away. Small things can bring it back. A certain tone of voice, a place, a moment that carries more feeling than it should. Love under this energy is shaped by emotional safety, by the need to feel seen, held, understood. Right now, there is a longing here, not necessarily to return to the past, but to understand why it still matters. You may wonder why certain connections leave such lasting impressions, why some bonds feel unfinished, even when they are no longer active. The truth is gentle. Some love is not meant to be resolved. It is meant to be remembered without pain. allow yourself to hold the memory without judgment, it softens. It becomes part of you, rather than something that pulls at you. There is a kind of love that wants to be seen, not admired, not praised, simply recognized. If this energy feels close to you, you may understand the quiet desire to matter, to feel chosen without having to explain why, to know that your presence alone is enough. Love here carries warmth, generosity, a natural giving. But beneath that openness, there is a vulnerability that rarely shows itself. You may give more than you receive. Offer reassurance before it is asked for. Show strength even when you would rather rest. And yet, what you truly want is simple: to feel wanted without performing, to feel valued without proving. Right now, there may be a subtle ache here, not dramatic, not loud, just the sense that you have been waiting to be met in the same way you meet others. Love under this energy is learning that being chosen does not come from shining brighter. It comes from allowing yourself to be seen as you already are. You do not need to impress. You do not need to hold everything together. The right connection recognizes you without effort. And when that recognition arrives, it feels quiet, steady, and real. There is a kind of love that tries to understand everything, not to control, but to protect. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize the habit of thinking things through before allowing yourself to feel them fully. Love here is careful, observant, attentive. You notice details others overlook. Small shifts in tone, subtle changes in behavior, and you often respond by adjusting yourself. You may wonder whether you are doing enough, saying the right thing, choosing the right moment. This is not doubt. It is devotion expressed through thought. But right now, there is mental fatigue here. You may feel responsible for keeping things balanced, for anticipating what could go wrong, for fixing what has not yet broken. Love under this energy is learning that care does not require constant vigilance, that closeness does not need to be perfected to be real. You do not have to analyze every feeling to honor it. You do not have to earn rest through effort. Sometimes love becomes clearer when the mind steps back and allows the heart a moment of silence. And in that quiet space, you may realize that nothing was wrong to begin with. There is a kind of love that is always adjusting, always listening, always considering both sides. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize how easily you step into the space between people, how naturally you soften edges, how often you carry the weight of harmony. Love here wants peace, fairness, mutual understanding. And yet, right now, there is distance, not because connection is missing, but because balance has become a responsibility rather than a shared experience. You may find yourself pausing before speaking, choosing words carefully, measuring how much of yourself to reveal. You do this to keep things calm, to avoid disruption, to maintain equilibrium. But in that effort, something subtle happens. Your own needs begin to quiet themselves. Love under this energy is learning that balance does not require self-erasure, that closeness does not come from constant compromise. It comes from allowing the space to hold two truths at once. You do not need to carry the relationship alone. You do not need to smooth every moment. When love is balanced, it meets you halfway without asking you to disappear. There is a kind of love that does not fade quietly. It does not drift away. It stays. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize the intensity beneath calm surfaces, the way connection is felt deeply, even when nothing is said. Love here is not casual. It attaches. It roots itself. And once it does not let go easily. You may feel a bond that continues long after circumstances change. A connection that exists beyond contact, beyond logic, beyond time. This is not obsession. It is depth. But depth carries weight. Right now, there may be a feeling of being tied to something you cannot fully release and do not truly want to. You may sense the presence of someone even in their absence. Feel their influence in moments of quiet. Notice how certain emotions still rise without warning. Love under this energy is learning the difference between connection and control, between holding and trusting. You do not need to guard your heart so tightly. Not everything that touches you is meant to wound. When love is allowed to exist without fear of loss, it becomes transformative rather than consuming. And in that transformation, something heavy begins to soften. There is a kind of love that needs space in order to breathe, not because it is shallow, but because it grows best without walls. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize the pull between closeness and distance, the desire to move forward, to explore, to remain open. Love here resists confinement. It needs room to exist honestly. And yet, right now, there is a quiet contradiction. You may feel yourself stepping back, even while still caring deeply. You may avoid defining things, not because they don't matter, but because you fear losing yourself inside them. This is not indifference. It is self-preservation. Love under this energy is learning that freedom does not disappear when connection deepens. It changes form. You do not need to run to remain whole. You do not need to stay distant to stay true. When love respects movement, it does not trap. It travels alongside you. And when space is chosen gently, not as escape, but as honesty, connection remains intact. There is a kind of love that does not announce itself. It shows up quietly, consistently. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize how deeply you value reliability, how love for you is something built over time, not something spoken easily. You express care through action, through presence, through staying when things become difficult. Right now, there may be a sense of carrying more than your share, of holding things together because someone has to. Love here often takes responsibility before allowing vulnerability. You may feel safer managing emotions than expressing them, safer providing structure than asking for reassurance. This is not coldness, it is protection. Love under this energy is learning that commitment does not require constant control, that trust can exist without proving strength at every moment. You are allowed to rest inside connection. You are allowed to lean, not only support. The right bond understands your silence. It does not demand explanation. And when love meets you with patience, your guarded heart softens. Naturally, there is a kind of love that lives quietly beneath the surface. It does not cling. It does not demand. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize the distance others sometimes misunderstand. The way you care deeply without always showing it in expected ways. Love here is thoughtful, observant, often private. You may prefer to keep your emotions protected, not because they are weak, but because they are personal. Right now, there may be a sense of standing slightly apart, still connected, but not fully immersed. You may feel closest when there is space, most yourself when you are not being watched. This can create confusion for others, but for you, it feels natural. Love under this energy is learning that closeness does not require explanation, that connection can exist quietly, without constant reassurance. You do not need to perform intimacy. You do not need to justify your boundaries. The right connection respects your rhythm. It meets you where you are, without trying to pull you closer than you're ready to be. And in that acceptance, distance becomes comfort, not separation. There is a kind of love that does not ask for anything in return. It simply exists, soft, open, accepting. If this energy feels familiar, you may recognize the ease with which you feel others, their moods, their unspoken needs, their quiet pain. Love here flows naturally. It forgives easily. It understands without explanation. And yet, right now, there may be a tenderness that feels exposed, as if you have given more than you received, not because you were asked, but because you cared. This is not naivete. It is compassion. Love under this energy is learning that unconditional love does not require self-sacrifice, that empathy can exist without losing boundaries. You are allowed to care deeply and still protect your peace. You are allowed to release what hurts without closing your heart. When love is gentle, it does not cling. It does not demand permanence. It allows things to come and to leave without pain. And in that quiet acceptance, love becomes light. It rests. It breathes. It remains. You don't need to hold on to these words. They are not meant to stay. Breathing continues gently, without effort, without direction. The feelings that surfaced have already begun to settle. Nothing is pulling anymore. Nothing is waiting to be resolved. If awareness drifts, let it drift. If it returns briefly, let it return. There is no beginning here, and no clear ending, only a quiet sense of balance. And somewhere beneath this calm, the same gentle awareness notices the breath again, the stillness again, the openness that was already present. Without realizing it, you have returned to where you started.